This is not a test. Don't expect to be impressed. Put on your life vest. Sit down your armrest. It's time to stray from the grind. Don't take my hand, 'cause you'll find no peace of mind. Side quest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another Authors and Dragons side quest, the thing we do when we're not running around playing D&D badly. And tonight, it's another Hartness does interviews with his friends because he didn't want to play Jackbox games. So I've brought on a couple of subject matter experts for what we're going to talk about tonight. And what we're going to talk about is the most hyped pile of crap in the history of Magic the Gathering. And here to talk to us about that, and I'm going to let them handle their own intros because I lost my notes. So, first, we've got Landon Crispins. And Landon, tell the world who you are and where they can find your other work.
Sure. Landon Crispins. I am a writer for TCG Player Infinite. So if you go to tcgplayer.infinite.com, you can find my articles on Commander, MTG Finance, and other great topics on Magic. And my articles are usually up every Tuesday each month. So check them out. One is live today, which happens to be my 100th article exclusively for TCG Player Infinite. So at quite a milestone achievement. I've been writing for them for about 3 years.
That's fantastic, dude. And Lincoln, who are you?
I'm Lincoln, obviously.
Yeah.
But I am the creator of Top Decked, the essential Magic app, the only Magic app you need. And I've been doing that for about 7 years now. So we've got a lot of people using it at this point.
Can confirm because I'm one of them.
But essentially, it's an app for building decks, collecting cards, basically everything you need to do for Magic.
Yeah, you can
even read Landon's articles.
And you can track your life totals during games. You can keep track of your collection, make up your... I use it a lot for my wish list for what I want to buy and trade for. So that's what
Listen, if I listed features for the app, we would be here all night.
Maybe in a future episode if this one gets a lot of views. But also because then I would know what all the features were finally from the app that I've been a subscriber for years. And that's because I'm Slack and I use it for the two things I need. But since we're talking about Magic the Gathering collections and Magic the Gathering finance, Landon, why don't you tell everybody what Wizards of the Coast has done with this silliness?
Certainly. They have created a one-of-one version of the ring that everybody wants in the whole wide world, to the point where there is a bounty offer of over $2 million from a company that will fly you overseas, give you paella, and $2 million if you open the ring within essentially the next couple of weeks. But there are other people that have offered $1 million and other crazy amounts of money for possibly the most expensive trading card ever printed from a collectibles standpoint in at least the modern era of time. There are, I'm sure, some very old baseball cards that might be competitive with that, but from a modern era printed collectible in the last decades of our existence, it's quite insane and wild, and people are very, very excited about trying to open it.
I'm personally here for the offer to throw it in a volcano.
There was a guy, didn't he offer like he'd give you $500,000 and go with you to throw it in a volcano?
Yep.
But because that's what should happen. I mean, come on. This is how it's supposed to end. It's supposed to go into the fire. I would not throw mine into the volcano. I would be on a plane to Spain making requests for Paella after I emailed the very few rich people I know who play Magic, because maybe they'll preempt. But this is part of their Universes Beyond program where they bring in other intellectual property into Magic the Gathering. A lot of Magic players have strong opinions about this whole thing. And Lincoln, are you one of those?
Yes. Do you want the short answer or the long answer? They're both yes.
We just started, so you can go as long as you like. We're not running tight on time.
I'll start with this. I'll just say that I think that what they've done with the product is fantastic from a game development standpoint. I think they're doing really interesting things with the cards. I just don't want Tolkien in my collectible card game. Like, there should be a Tolkien collectible card game. I think it's cool, and I think the way they've done this in the past has worked for me, where they have universes within the non like intellectual property version of the cards. And that's great because to me, it lets people get the character of the, the theme or the lore that they want while still having an alternative if you want this to stay Magic. I mean, I grew up with Magic. I've been doing this since 1993 and I like Magic. I like Tolkien too, but I don't want them to be together to the point where I can't separate them.
So, no peanut butter in your chocolate is what you're saying. You like them
That's
both.
a horrible, horrible combination.
Landon, what do you think about Universes Beyond?
So I liked they've done for context Warhammer 40,000 as well. That was a commander only product. The difference here with the Lord of the Rings product is it's legal in Modern, which is a very popular format within the game of Magic the Gathering. Both are legal in Legacy, so I won't touch on that. But it is a little odd that you can play a Modern format tournament or game and kill somebody with the One Ring and other cards in your deck. To what Lincoln's point is, keeping them separate in like Commander, where you can choose to include or not include them in your deck. But having Gandalf and next to Tormagorf is a little odd from a flavor perspective. I do agree with Lincoln. I think the greater scope of Magic players are excited about it and don't seem to mind the flavor crossover. But I think in franchise players, and I would consider myself one too, it is a little odd that is a possibility. And breaking format barriers, I think, is the odd part of it.
Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't have much issue with it I wouldn't mind if the Universes Beyond stuff was only a Commander product, something that wasn't available for any competitive format. Not to say that Wizards supports Legacy and Vintage anymore anyway, because they don't really, but having the stuff bleed over into the core of Magic, it's a little icky. I like the reskin kind of things, like what they did with the box toppers. They picked 30 land and artifacts and gave them new art and new names, but they're still the same thing. So there's one where you can choose to use this version of Sword of Hearth and Home or the Lord of the Rings version of Sword of Hearth and Home, and you're not locked into the Tolkien printing.
Right. And I think that's what I was alluding to with Universes Within. I think they'd done a great job. I mean, even the Transformers, right? We've had robots in Magic now. And I thought that was, cute. I guess it's not for me, but they provided you the option to play with cards that weren't Transformers. And I think that's what I would like to see them continue doing. I know I'm probably the minority older and franchise player, but I think it leaves the door open to more people to have the option.
And I think that what it does is it's using the other intellectual property, the other IP, to draw new fans in. And now they're getting mainstream press coverage for the first time in a long time for Magic the Gathering.
Good mainstream coverage.
Yes, yes. Because there's a whole bunch of people who would very much like to open one of these with a little one of one right here. So they're buying this stuff, and then they're like, well, these are pretty. What do I do with them? Because if you don't get the one of one, then you have a whole bunch of Magic cards. And then it had better be a game.
I didn't even think about non-Magic players opening it just for the lottery ticket aspect.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when they announced this, that they were doing this, I said, oh my God, this is both genius and I hate it. But it's brilliant, and that just proves that, like, the marketing is working.
Yeah, and the volume and speed with which this product is moving off the shelves is ridiculous. I bought this today. This is the Lord of the Rings bundle. It comes with 20 non-foil basic lands, 20 foil basic lands, a special D20 that has sequential numbering so you can use it to spin down your life total. It's got a set of 4 of these scene cards that go together to make a panorama, the One Ring being one of them. And then it's got 8 booster packs. So this is the expensive part. Now, Landon, TCG Player's the largest Magic marketplace in the world. I mean,
yeah, more or less, yeah. Well, most certainly, the North America definitely the largest, and the world, private company can't tell you for sure, but likely,
sure.
likely.
It's certainly the largest relevant one to us, because we can't really buy on Card Market or whatever they use as a TCG Player version in Asia. There are usually hundreds, if not thousands, of copies of any Magic product on TCG Player. When I went to look for a bundle, and these are the things that usually you're tripping over in game stores, because they're a little more expensive than you would pay for the number of set boosters. You don't necessarily, if you're an enfranchised player, you probably don't buy these very often, because aside from the box being cool, you're not really getting a whole lot out of it. There were 9 listings, and most of them were one-ofs. There was one shop that had 4 listed, so there were fewer than 20 of these available for sale this afternoon. That's nuts.
Did you refresh the page and see how many had sold in the last 10 seconds between when you viewed it?
I probably should have, because that would have made me decide whether or not to try and break them apart and sell the singles or sell the things sealed. And I did break them apart and sell the singles. This one's not sold. This one I'm keeping because I want one to play with. The one I listed at $53. That's a lot of money for one piece of cardboard. And it's a ridiculous amount of money when you think about the fact that there's one of these in every one of these. It's in all of them. So why the hell is this worth $50? It's not. I listed it for $53 and it was online for less than 5 minutes before it sold.
Well, what does Landon think about that? Do you think it'll stay $50?
In the short term, yes. In the long term, no. Because I believe Wizards can print packs through 2025 per their agreement with licensing. And it's going to end up like Modern Horizons 2, for those that know about it, where literally I think they just stopped printing it and it came out 2 years ago. So in the short term, yes. But at some point, there has to be an inflection where a $60, $65 bundle with a $55 card in it doesn't make sense. And at some point, it has to equal $65. And right now, it's $55. And if you think that 8 set boosters is worth $10, no, they're worth more than $10. So at some point when the demand and supply become a bit equalized, which is not going to be anytime in the next month or two, probably a little longer. Yes, I think it's that being able to just open bundles and flip them for a profit is going to balance out. But it may be fourth quarter Christmas. I can't tell you, but they are reprinting holiday bundles, additional collector boosters that don't have the one of one ring. There is more product to come in the pipeline, and you are going to see card prices drop. And if the whole set's worth $0 and the one ring's worth $60, then I eat my words. But something has to equalize.
Yeah, I mean, Nazgul, they printed the Nazgul because you need the ring wraiths, right? Well, they tweaked the rules of Magic to say you can have up to 9 in your deck. And I love that flavor. And I like that they've done it. And it's not the first time they've done it. They did it with 7 dwarves to where you can have 7. So they did it with a bunch of things that you can have any number. But Nazgul's an uncommon. And they're selling for $8 to $10 a piece for an uncommon that is getting opened like nobody's business. That just feels insane.
It is kind of insane. It's considered like the mythic uncommon, but what's driving it is that you can play 9 of them in a deck, in a modern deck, in a legacy deck, in a commander deck, and guess what? There's 9 pieces of art that people have to collect, and that's the kicker. There's
And
9 pieces of art
really smart
that have equal rarity. So yeah, you can pull an uncommon Nazgul, but guess what? Pulling the specific one of the 9 is way harder than pulling a mythic rare out of a pack. Let me just say that.
Do you think there's a world where we see Nazgul worth more than the one ring because of rarity issues?
It is a perplexing issue that you're more likely to pull the one ring than a specific Nazgul, I would say. I did not do the math, but I think that's probably correct. But I would say the answer to that is probably, I'm going to say no, with the stipulation that not everybody wants to collect 9 Nazgul.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's but everybody wants a ring in their collection, including us talking right now.
For the record, I want 9 Nazgul, and I've already sold 5 because I don't believe that an uncommon in an in-print set can be worth $8 or $9. So I may as well take my win now. But this card's also good.
Is it though?
Yeah.
It is good. I can't deny that.
I
want
mean,
it to be bad.
I
but
did too.
Objectively, in certain situations or formats where you have 4 of them, it is probably quite good.
I mean, okay, so this is the point at which if we were on a real Magic podcast, we would have all kinds of stuff where the image comes up and all that. But this is not a Magic podcast, so I'm going to read this shit to you. It's an artifact. It costs 4 to cast, so it costs 4 mana. It is legendary, which means you can only have 1 on the battlefield at a time. And here's what it says. It is indestructible. When the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. That means you can't be targeted by anything, and you will take no creature-based damage, and
no spell-based damage.
You won't take.
You can still life.
You can
you
still
can still
lose
the game.
Yes, and you can still, you can still lose life. You can still get milled out if it's an all players thing. So you can still be put in a position to where you will lose the game. But it's far more likely that if your opponent is trying to win and you find some way to put this onto the battlefield at instant speed, it's probably a 1v1 game as soon as, because your opponent's probably not winning that turn.
Yeah, the One Ring does not have flash, which is probably a good thing, although there are 38 cards that do have flash. Actually, sorry, not as many as 38. There are some doubles or multiple versions of cards, but there are a lot of cards with flash in this set.
Yeah, there are. Now, at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the ring. Great flavor because the ring has a cost to carrying it around. You tap this, put a burden counter on it, and you draw a card for each burden counter on it. So you pay 4 and tap it to draw 1 card. If you don't have another way to cheat untapping and untapping, if all you can do is untap it once per turn, your next turn you tap it and you draw 2 cards. You've paid 1 life at this point for 2 cards.
Meanwhile, you can't take damage, so you're just sitting back.
Mm-hmm. So if you've got some way to get this onto the battlefield and tap it and untap it, especially if you then have a way to sacrifice it before your next upkeep, who cares if you put 20 burden counters on it if you're gonna win that turn, who cares?
The card Mind Over Matter comes to mind.
Might have just rebuilt my Mind Over Matter Volo deck yesterday.
And for those who don't know what Mind Over Matter does, it is a blue enchantment that costs 4 blue and I think 2 or 3 to cast. And all it says is discard a card from your hand to tap or untap target permanent. So with the One Ring, that is an infinite draw cards, sort of infinite draw cards, as long as you have cards in your deck.
Yep.
And you can just go from there.
So you tap it, you draw 1, you immediately throw that card away and untap it. Tap it, draw 2. You only have to throw 1 of those cards away to untap it. And now Lincoln has told the universe exactly why I wanted to make sure I kept one of these, because it does go infinite with, and it wins you the game with Labman, Thassa's Oracle, Jace Wielder of Mysteries, any of those effects that if you try to draw and can't, you win.
Well, I look forward to losing to you in a couple weeks.
Your lips to my deck's ears, buddy. Landon, what do you think about this? What do you think about this card in Modern?
So, if I must spell it out for you, it's pretty busted, and here's why. So, turn 4, you're playing an artifact, right? And normally it's like I just took my whole turn to play an artifact to draw me a card, and that's pretty bad in Modern. But to what Lincoln pointed out, you really can't get hurt for a turn. You have protection from everything, so you're basically playing it and time walking your opponent. Sure, they can play a land, they can play a creature, they can play a spell, but they can't hurt you. So it's not that much of a cost to play it when you get a free turn out of it from being put behind. In a sense, I mean, yes, they can advance their board state, but the protection is quite valuable for a turn. Then you get a card, then you untap, right? And you get another card, and you lose just 1 life. Okay, so you get 2 cards and a time walk pseudo on your opponent for 4 mana of any color. Okay,
3
not
cards.
to mention, 3 cards. Not to mention, yes, 3 cards because it has a burden counter. Sorry, 3 cards. And not to mention it's indestructible, so they can't really remove it very easily. So then on that turn, you can, tap it again, and as Lincoln said, and get 2 cards. So you have 3 cards over 2 turns, and you were protected. That's not even, that's the floor, okay? And you didn't spend any more mana than 4. So on your next turn, assuming you've now advanced your board state, you get hit for 2 life, and you draw 3 cards. So you've drawn 6 cards off the cost of 3 life over 3 turns. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. And the card advantage off of something that an opponent really can't stop, right? You have to exile it. There's not a lot of cards that do that. They did print a common in the new set that people are now thinking about sideboarding that is a way to remove it. But
I'm replacing a Braid with that in any deck that I run a Braid in.
It's absolutely crazy in a mid-range deck or a deck strategy that supports going long and not being very aggressive. So yeah, I think it's pretty crazy. And all you have to do to not take more life is just play another one. Oh, I just protected myself again from my opponent killing me, and now I can draw another 1, 3, or 6 cards over the next couple of turns. That's where it's crazy. The downside is far less detrimental than the amount of cards you can draw off of it, and the fact that your opponent just can't touch it. So that's why I think it's been blowing up in Modern and decks that can support it, and will likely continue to, because you can just bury your opponent in card advantage, and that's one of the essential strategies of Magic. Is the person that draws the most cards has a good chance of winning. So,
which
Yeah.
which does not explain my win percentage with the number of cards I draw in decks. I at least usually win that bit.
Yeah, I'll add on to that and say, as a control player, I like the control strategy. I like to shut down what my opponent's doing. This is the control player's dream, right? It's a card that says, I draw more stuff to stop my opponent, and I can't die, which is the biggest threat to a control deck, is like getting overwhelmed by stuff that's taken away your life. And just being able to say, to advance that far without threat of dying is incredible. It's everything a control deck wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm running a control deck, I'm gonna try and go nuts with this and Teleportation Circle, because then I'm only going to get to draw one extra card, but I'm invulnerable to everything else.
Yeah, and I think this card is broken in more than just control. I think the reason it's so busted is like combo decks can use this the same way that a control deck can. It's just good in everything for the most part. I mean, some maybe like tempo based low mana profile decks aside, I feel like this can slot into pretty much anything.
Now, what else from the set is good? What else is seeing play? Because from a flavor standpoint and from a fantasy book nerd standpoint, I am loving the idea of being able to build a Bilbo Baggins commander deck, because the Bilbo Baggins card is white, green, black, does some stuff, but has an ability to go through your deck, pull out every creature, poop it onto the board in one shot if you have 111 life. Oh, that's what the first part is. If you were to gain life, you gain that much life plus 1. So you build yourself a little life gain pillow fort deck, and then boop, hi, I'm at 111 life, which is not that hard to get to in Commander.
And that's Bilbo Retired Burglar, I believe.
No, that's the other one. It's just Bilbo Baggins.
Okay.
I think Retired Burglar is the blue-red.
Got it.
I was a little confused by Bilbo covering like almost all of the color pie. I'm like, come on, bro.
You got to make sure you're playing Bilbo's Ring while you're at it.
Yeah. And the
there are a lot of rings in this set.
There are. And so many swords. All the swords. Sting looks pretty good. Sting actually looks really gross.
The one that has my eye is Mithril Coat, the flash indestructible equips when it comes onto the battlefield.
Yeah. And it's
That's a neat trick.
3?
3,
cast?
yep.
Yeah.
And 3 to equip.
Yeah, I like that one. Also really pretty.
Yeah, I think the fact that card is indestructible itself and gives indestructible is pretty wild at flash speed. I mean, that's
a blowout waiting to happen.
It's like they looked and said, Darksteel Plate should cost half and be way easier to put onto a creature. Oh, and let's make it a surprise when you do it.
Yeah, we don't need a equip cost. Let's just make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, guys, Darksteel Plate was fine. But this is better.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to go first with the question of what's getting played.
Yeah, because you probably have some stats for that.
I do, actually, and I prepared some for our little hangout here. I did an analysis of sample hands from Top Deck Simulator. For those of you who are not familiar with Top Deck, it has a simulator where you can playtest your decks, see how they run over the course of a few turns. You can actually sort of go head-to-head with your own decks and see how they play off against each other. And all of the stats from that go into the fancy Top Deck database. And the Top Deck database says that the cards that are being kept in opening hands the most from the new set in order. Actually, I'll do the list in a second. I'll give you a little bit more about how I made these statistics or did the analysis. But I offset the cards that were kept in hands with the cards that were mulliganed as well. So we don't just see like a biased result. I'm taking all of the cards that were kept and subtracting all of the cards that were also tossed back. So these are the cards that were kept more. These are the cards that people want to see in their opening hands. And I don't know if that means they're actually good in their opening hands, but it's what people are experimenting with. It's what they want to see. So the cards people are interested in is what I'm going to take out of that. And number one, which is probably to no one's surprise, is Orcish Bowmasters, which is
That card's insane.
incredibly pushed as a 2-drop. It costs 1 black, 1 colorless, has flash again, and when it enters the battlefield, and whenever an opponent draws a card that was not drawn for the first time in their draw step, it is going to deal a damage to anything and make a big orc. Actually, a little orc, but the more they do that, the orc gets bigger. And this card is seeing play in every format that it's legal in.
Yeah, card's nuts.
Yeah,
I
and
have
maybe
I have one going into my Shieldred deck.
into more details on these later. I'll just list a few, and I'll let you guys take it from there. But we have Orcish Bowmasters in number 1 place, Delighted Halfling number 2, Nazgul in number 3, which I was actually a little surprised to see, and then Generous Ent, March from the Black Gate, Boromir, Warden of the Tower, and then in 7th place, the One Ring.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I've been hearing a lot about Boromir, that Boromir. And it's like every member of the Fellowship, every good guy and bad guy got like 3 different cards. So this is Mythic Boromir. And I've been hearing a lot about that on CEDH podcasts for how great they think it's going to be in like Winota stacks decks, because Boromir is also a human and Winota can go get humans. So, and it's got a stacks effect where if an opponent casts a spell that doesn't spend mana, counter the spell. So Force of Will, Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Force of Negation,
All of
Summoner's,
the new elementals, the endurances, and
the Evoke Elementals, yeah, Subtlety, and all of those. Deadly Rollick, Deflecting Swat, Fierce Guard, all of those, and a lot of these are cards we see all the time. I mean, Lincoln, how many times do you think you've cast Force of Will in your life?
I couldn't tell you. I've played in almost every deck that I have.
Yeah.
Played it at least 6 times last night.
Yeah, I believe it, because you were playing Legacy, and there's no way you were playing a Legacy deck that didn't have Force of Will in it.
It happens occasionally. I'm not proud of it.
Well, Landon, tell us about Delighted Halfling, and why do people care?
That card is also pretty insane. Maybe not Orcish Bowmaster level, but it's a 1/2 for 1 green that taps for colorless. So that's not that outstanding. Being a 1/2 does matter in some formats, though. So the extra toughness can survive a little bit more than a 1/1. But
Survives Orcish Bowmasters.
it does survive a ping
first
from
shot.
Orcish Bowmasters, at least the first draw. Yeah. But the real kicker on the card is you can tap it for a mana of any color to cast a legendary spell, and that legendary spell cannot be countered. That is the reason why the card is so good. And there are lots of legendary spells, not just legendary creatures, but the One Ring cannot be countered anymore. What? You mean I can't counter this indestructible card draw insane engine?
I hadn't even thought of that.
Nope, you can't. Not with the Delighted Hermit. And so, legendary artifacts. There are legendary spells in the game. There's one, a black removal spell in the new set, for example. So there are legendary things that are in other formats other than creatures. And yes,
every planeswalker.
Every planes.
Oh my
exactly.
God! Yes.
Every planeswalker. So yes, there's a lot of cards, and green already has fixing. Is already like a great color to splash, but like, you don't even need to run mana of other colors if you can just cast it uncounterable off this card for that pip, So yeah, it's seeing immediate play next to Orcish Bowmasters Index, might I add, which is pretty wild. Yeah, so Yawgmoth Evolution and Modern's running both. And I think there's and Legacy, of course, is playing both cards as well in different decks. So already the set's been out very short time, and they're winning tournaments. Both cards and decks are winning tournaments on top of the One Ring, which also is winning tournaments. So it's pretty wild. Yeah. So Delight of Hermit is up there, certainly in the top three, no question.
I heard a lot of people before this set came out talking about how it didn't feel like it was powerful enough for a modern set. And yet, it's had an immediate impact on competitive play.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Most of us, I would say, didn't think the set was going to be anything more than a commander blip on the radar. And man, it has definitely shown its colors on some cards. A lot of the set is not, very constructed playable. But you have already just mentioned, Boromir certainly, Delighted, Orcish, Bowmasters, the One Ring. I mean, not every set has cards of that power level and a sense of play, but like until people got their hands on it, we just didn't know.
Yeah, not every set is Modern Horizons 2 or First Commander Legends.
And I have to admit, I'll be totally honest, I was so upset about the intellectual property situation that I did not look at this set for a long time. But I have been getting into it, and even some of the stranger cards that I would never have guessed would see competitive play are seeing play in Legacy.
The Ent one that you talked about, which one was that?
Generous Ent.
Because that's not. Because the only one I thought that would be anything would be Fangborn, the big tree folk commander. But what the hell even is Generous Ent?
So Generous Ent, I don't think it's really seeing play in Legacy, but it is in Modern. And it's a 6 mana 5/7 with reach. It's green. 1 green, 6 mana, 5/7 reach. And when it enters the battlefield, you create a food token, which is in itself, not a great card, right?
We're still firmly in the who cares territory.
Yeah. The part that's interesting is that it has forest cycling. So you're seeing decks that play Living End and Cascade run this, and I think there's a red one as well, to get the lands out of their deck before they play their Cascade and guarantee hit.
Huh.
Their Living End.
And
then they get a 5/7 with reach that makes food tokens back out of their graveyard.
Interesting. Huh. So
that's why that card's getting played.
On the one hand, it's kind of like a green Ponder or Preordain getting stuff out of the way so you can draw good stuff. But then it's also a little bit like Victimize and Reanimate, where you're putting something into your yard and then almost immediately getting it back out onto the battlefield. And look, you crap out a 5/7, that's especially in a 60 card format.
Yeah, and it's not even bad if you have already gotten all the lands out of your deck, because you're just filling up your graveyard for Living End again.
Wow.
And like also it's a forest cycling, so that doesn't mean like a basic forest. That means a forest. And I think that's a
tomb, breeding pool, triomes, bayous.
Mm-hmm.
And the red one's is essentially the same, but a 6/5 trampler with mountains, so you can find a mountain, as Lincoln pointed out. They're very similar, just different colors. Well, they're both gigantic creatures that are very scary on the battlefield, especially being put there for little to no cost.
Huh.
The other random card that caught my eye was, and again, this hurts me inside to say this out loud as the name of a Magic card. 4th Eorlingus! !
Oh my!
Which is in the name of the card.
What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. It's 1 red, 1 white, and X. Create X 2/2, I think red and white, knight tokens with vigilance and haste.
Trample
and haste. So this is getting played in Delver. Oh, and then when you deal combat damage, I think you become the monarch or something like that. Yeah, so you're going to attack with a bunch of hasty boys and then become the monarch, draw your extra card, and then good luck to your opponents to get the monarch back when you have 4 vigilance and haste or haste trample knights or whatever.
This has got to be out of the Commander product.
It is.
Because there was a Jeskai, one of the Commander precons was Jeskai. And
That
Amazon
sounds right.
screwed up my order and sent me one of the Hosts of Mordor Commander decks as opposed to one set of all 4 Commander decks.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, because now I'll probably get my gift bundles before I get my Commander decks. But, well, Landon, what else are you seeing that people want to play?
So I think from a constructed perspective, from Modern Legacy, we hit the big ones. The thing is, like, they're being, as I said, they're being played together in decks, not even just like here and there, which is kind of wild that you're seeing Orcish Bowmasters and Delighted Halfling. You're also seeing it played in multiple archetypes. You know, Tron, Living Ends, Yawgmoth Evolution for Modern. Essentially, the Ring is being played. One Jeskai Breach. Interesting. You know, I mean, it's all over the place, and Legacy is some different decks for those as well. But that's from a constructed perspective. Those are definitely the hitters. From a commander perspective, people are very excited about the same cards. Surprise, surprise! If it's powerful in Modern and Legacy, maybe it's broken in Commander. I don't know. Also, I think from a commander perspective, though, from like a leader of a deck, people are really interested in Sorin the Dark Lord. That card's pretty scary.
I've already
If you want to
built
talk about
that
that for a minute. Well, there you go. So
I've already built it.
you want to share what it does?
I'm going to cheat and look it up so that I don't miss anything because everything in this set has paragraphs of text. Sauron the Dark Lord is Grixis in 3, so 3 colorless plus a blue, a black, and a red. It is a 7/6 legendary avatar horror. Horror being relevant to a pile of cards that got printed in either one of the Innistrad sets. It has Ward, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. Why not just say hexproof? Because
I feel like this is worse.
holy shit. I mean, yes, you can Swords to Plowshares my commander, but you have to sacrifice yours.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. And that's not the part that's making it see play. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs 1. Okay. So I put this guy down on, say, turn 4. I've ramped my fat ass off, and I've got him out there on turn 4. And it's a commander game. Well, either I'm going to have a minimum of a 3/3 orc when everything comes back around to me, or my opponents aren't going to do anything. You're not going to take a whole turn off just to keep me from beefing up an orc. You can end up with an 8/8 orc in one orbit. That's not all.
That's pretty gross.
Whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. There's a lot of mechanics about the ring and it tempting you and it giving things to things. And we only have so much time on the podcast, so go look that up. Go look up Ring Tempts You MTG. And then think every time the big orc that your opponents made you hits anybody, the ring tempts you. Oh, and we're not done. Whenever the ring tempts you, and there are a ton of cards in this set that have things that happen to let the ring tempt you. Whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 4 cards.
That's
So
tempting.
gross. So
That's
gross.
tempting.
Yeah, because how often have we been playing Commander and you're like, well, I'm down to 2 cards and they're both land because I've been sitting here drawing nothing but land for 5 turns. Okay, I'll hit you with this orc. I'll throw away these 2 lands and draw 4 new cards. And then if it's me, it's 4 more land. But, you know, other people, your mileage may vary. This card's gross as a commander. The 8 mana Sauron isn't bad as a commander. And who the hell thought we'd ever say that about an 8 mana commander? But
Yeah, that one makes mass 5. Your orcs
Yeah.
are huge to start with. And that's whenever you cast a spell, I think.
yeah, then there's multiple iterations of Sauron's bitch, Saruman. I'm trying to look for the one. I'm trying to look for the one that's in Grixis colors. Okay, here we go. Saruman the White Hand. 1 and Grixis, so 1 blue, black, red. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, amass orcs X, where X is that spell's mana value.
Wow.
I play a commander deck that is designed around casting big non-creature spells and getting stuff for it. I'm already playing that. If this didn't have that pesky black pip, it would 100% be going into my Ovika commander deck, but I don't feel like swapping out. I don't feel like swapping out commanders. I like my commander. But this guy's gross, and he goes in your Sauron deck, because then he makes your orcs bigger. The way amass works, if you weren't playing during that time, is whenever you amass 1, you create an army token. You create a token creature that's a 0/0 army. And when you amass a number, you put that many +1/+1 counters on your army. Next time you amass, if you have an army, you put that many counters on your army. If you don't have an army, you make an army and put that many counters on it. So it doesn't let you go wide, but it lets you go very tall. And then there are older amass cards like Dreadhorde Invasion that are really pretty good with this.
Yeah, so to give you a little example of how powerful a mass can be, like John was saying, I played Legacy last night, and I was trying out Orcish Bowmasters in my deck, and first hand of the first game of the night, I get Orcish Bowmasters, I can play it on turn 1, and I play my land, play my mana ramp, and pass turn to my opponent, and what do they do first turn? They play a Brainstorm.
And you flash in that Orcish Bowmasters.
I flashed in Orcish Bowmasters, did him 3 damage, and then 4 damage, sorry, because they deal 1 damage when they come into the battlefield.
Right. Forgot about
And
that.
then I had a 4/4 Orc and an Orcish Bowmasters. And then they passed turn back to me because they just played their first spell of the game. That's all they got. And I attacked them for 5. So they've already taken 9 damage on turn 1.
Yeah,
It's insane.
It's gross.
that's almost half their life total in a constructed format. Yeah, okay, that's disgusting.
I
And that's a
assume
control deck playing this card against them.
I assume you won that game.
I did. I definitely won that game.
That's less amusing than if you had just gotten blown out, but yeah.
They
You would
did
have been
resolve
disappointed.
a Murktide Regent,
Mm,
but it was not enough. I attacked through it, and they died anyway.
wow.
Hmm.
That's crazy. So, do we think this set is good for the game?
Yeah. And in totality, it's great for the game. The amount of PR exposure on local news channels, on articles, bringing attention to the game has been insane. Also, you bring in an IP that's bigger than Magic is also a great thing because it's attracting, as you already said, lots of people. You know, Warhammer 40K is popular, but a lot of Magic players also play Warhammer 40K, and it's not. I wouldn't know. I don't consider it gigantically more popular than Magic, but Lord of the Rings for sure. You're bringing in, and people know what it is. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody, if they haven't seen the movie, they know why they haven't seen the movies, right? Like,
Yeah, John, you're the writer. How would you like your books to be Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, I'd be all right with that. I'd be all right with. I would be pretty happy with getting a quarter of Tolkien's sales today. As old as those books are, they're still constantly churning. They are always solid selling titles. So yeah, millions and millions of people are familiar with that.
But sorry, Landon, I interrupted you. You were talking about the IP being good for the game.
Oh, yeah, the IP is great for the game. I mean, you're bringing in a lot of exposure, people who don't know Magic. That is one of the reasons they're doing it, to attract new players, right? But even then, like you talked about people buying it just to collect. So there's scene cards. You can create a whole scene of, I think, 13 or 14 cards, make a gigantic mural scene, the showcase, and then the ring scene. And then there's another scene that you got in like the pre-release packs and showcase with like the Hobbit. So like just collecting those in foil or non-foil, even as a fan of Lord of the Rings, is a cool thing to do, even if you don't understand the game. So they've definitely like thought of ways to make it fun and interesting for people that don't play, beyond the scope of just the crazy $2 million card, and beyond all of that. Like it is nothing but a home run, and the fact that they're making hand over fist now on product. But even without making hand over fist, the PR itself has been gangbusters. I think bigger than anyone kind of expected. Well, I think bigger than the company expected.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the IP, just the number of people coming to the game alone or getting exposure to the game is the best thing for the game. Magic has been for a long time kind of a niche product. It's played by a lot of people, don't get me wrong, but if you ask an average person on the street, they're going to say, Magic, what? And then you name another card game and they're like, oh yeah, my kid plays that or something. But now you're starting to see that change. I mean, and it's been changing over the last 5 years or so, maybe 10 years. But that's number one. And number two is, I think anytime you have cards that start to see constructed play at a large level, like winning tournaments from a new set like this, I think that's good for the game, because it keeps things changing, and when things are changing, people stay interested, and there's more creative space to build decks and experiment with stuff, and that self-servingly makes people turn to apps a little bit more to see what cards are good with these cards. Like my app can tell you that, and they start reading TCG Play articles about the cards, and it just gets everyone's gears turning, and I think that's good.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that's about the time we've got for today. So why don't we go real quick back through, and you can tell people where to find your work and how they can support you. Landon?
Yep. Once again, I write for TCG Player Infinite. That's tcgplayer.infinite.com. You can find my articles most Tuesdays. And you can also find me on Twitter at MyWeeklyGrind if you care to message me or follow me.
All right, Lincoln.
As we covered earlier, my app is called Top Decked, TOPDECKED, and you can find it at topdecked.com. It is also in the Play Store and the Apple App Store for all platforms. You can install it on desktop, and it does everything you need for Magic. If you have any questions about it, you can message me with the feedback button, and I look forward to hearing from you.
And you know how to find me far too often on this channel, and in just a little over a month, you can find me in Portland, Oregon at Authors and Dragons Con 2023. So if you haven't already picked up your tickets for A&D Con, you need to get over to authorsanddragons.com and buy your tickets now. Thanks, guys, for joining me, and thank all of you for watching. Until next time, bye.
Authors and Dragons is brought to you under a Creative Commons license, meaning you are free to share this material so long as credit is given to those who created it, which is us, the people you just heard play the game. Opening and closing themes performed by the Gore Core 4.
Authors and Dragons!